So, without further ado, my brother Sam. When was the first time you realized you didn't fit in? I can tell you where I was. I was in 4th grade, and a little bit of backstory. I was born into a cult, and I moved around a lot as a kid. Didn't really settle down until I was 8 years old, and I was in Greece. I didn't speak the language, and I started going to school in 2nd grade. So by the time I hit 4th grade, it hadn't gotten much better, and with the language barrier, I had a hard time having even basic conversations, let alone making friends. Now, it just so happened that that year, 1999, the United States, along with NATO, was dropping bombs in Kosovo. Now, I'm not here to talk about whether they were right or wrong, but a lot of people were pissed with America. So what the school did was, and I think this was good on them, there was the entrance, and they put up wallpaper on either side so that kids could, express their thoughts creatively and write anti-war slogans. And it was fine for the most part. Most of them wrote, make love, not war, or drew little hippie signs. But some of them were a little meaner. And so I'm coming out of school one day and I see Fudge America. Fudge USA. So we all know it didn't say fudge. And so in my 10-year-old brain, given what I was going through at the time, I analyzed this and I said, well, this is against me. My dad's American. I'm half American. My mom's Greek, that's why I was there. So this is against me. And so what did I do? Again, my 10-year-old brain figuring it out. I took a marker and wrote a little something of my own. So the next kid who comes out looks at the wall. Hey, who wrote Fudge Grease? And I was just standing there. I didn't write it and walk away. I was just standing there waiting. And you can imagine, that turned into a fist fight. One fist fight turned into 5. And next thing I knew, I was having a group of kids chase me home to beat me up. Not for the last time. And so what that did to me was, it very strongly reinforced this mindset that I was on my own. That I would have to take care of myself and do things my own way. And from then on, I've had these 2 conflicting sides of my personality. One being this drive to be a rebel and to be my own person, to stand out. And the other, to appeal to this very human desire to fit in and to have somewhere that you belong. So, the first thing I did, and I think a lot of kids who feel rejected turn to this, is I turned to sports. Because there was, there's objectivity to it, and the discipline, no matter what's happening, you can always retreat to your basketball move or to your weights or to your whatever. For me, I didn't want any group sports. So I did Taekwondo. Because no one's gonna mess with you if you know Taekwondo, right? But things didn't get any better. Flash forward through high school. I did finally find someone who I made a deep connection with, and she cheated on me. So, high school's over, and I think to myself, okay, I'm not fitting in here. So that means I must belong in America, right? Half Greek, half American, not fitting in Greece, go to America. Except I didn't have very many options. I didn't have a plan. So I decided to join the US military. First step was Coast Guard. They turned me down because my eyes are pretty bad. They were. And I'm still kind of cross-eyed. And so after that, I went into the Navy recruiter. And I still remember exactly how that went. Because I walked into his office, he was talking to somebody already, so I sat down on the couch. And he looks over, and he says, "Hey, as soon as I'm done with this guy, I'll show you our Navy SEAL video." Now I knew about the SEALs. I knew because my dad had a little workout book, and I would see the pictures. And I knew deep down inside, if you're a Navy SEAL, nobody messes with you, right? And that's guaranteed community. That's a guaranteed if you get there, you belong. But I also knew my eyes wouldn't let me. So I told him that. I said, "Yeah, I'd like to, but my eyes." He goes, "Oh, no, you can get a waiver for that." You know, so my world changed right then. And immediately something that was unattainable became just difficult. But that day I learned not to set boundaries for myself. Of course, there would be more obstacles that I would face. I was a dual citizen, so I had a really hard time getting a secret clearance. Over the next 3 years in the Navy, I would take the SEAL fitness test 7 times, go deploy to Afghanistan, and be banging on the doors again and again until finally they let me go to SEAL training. Now when I did, 2 months later, I broke a leg, literally. And a short time after that, I got in trouble, mixed up with the wrong crowd, and had to start all over again. So I ended up doing 2 Hell Weeks. But eventually, I did graduate. I did become a SEAL. Now the problem with my thinking was that I imagined as soon as I got that trident on my chest, everything would be okay. Because I was seeking that outside validation. I thought that once I had that external proof of who I was, I would become more confident, I would feel like I belonged, and I would feel like I had friends. Of course, that's not how it works. And I did make some friends, don't get me wrong. But because of my ego and because of my insecurities, I overcompensated. See, once you get there, anywhere you go, no matter how hard you work to get there, you'll probably be average. And that's okay, but I didn't realize that. So to overcompensate, I was kind of an asshole. And the first time that showed itself, one of my buddies was doing drugs, which you shouldn't do anywhere, but especially in the Navy. And I lied to cover for him. Now, nobody wants to rat on their friends, but in this case, I probably didn't have to, because my leadership reached out to me before the whole thing went down, and they tried to work with me. They tried to give me away. But I was too stubborn. I was too desperate to show the fellas that I was one of them, that I was loyal to them, to the group of the boys, right? Screw the leadership. But the problem with that is, I compromised my integrity to them. And in a community like that, just like in almost every single community, you need trust in order to do your job. So, I thought I learned my lesson. But a couple years later, I volunteered to go to medic school, SEAL medic. And while I was at a civilian hospital there, I made a couple simple mistakes. I was wearing a hat that I wasn't supposed to be wearing, and I was chewing tobacco in the hospital. Not that big of a deal. But when the nurse tried to tell me so, I gave her attitude. Well, she told my leadership, I got kicked out of the school, and almost kicked out of the Navy. I was given my last chance, And after a year of pulling weeds and scraping paint, while all my friends were going on missions, that was my punishment. I was back to doing SEAL stuff. And again, my insecurities reared their ugly head. I was on the range. I made a little mistake with my rifle, but I lied to cover for myself. And again, I compromised my integrity, and that was just too much. My leadership needed to trust me, and I had failed them. Now I'm going to make a little aside from all this drama, because there was a silver lining to all this. I was exposed to the TV show Cosmos. Has anybody heard of that? Neil deGrasse Tyson? Yes. Inspiring show. And for the first time, it made me think of something outside of myself. I thought about space, I thought about the future. And so, I haven't told anyone this, but I texted my buddy, and I told him, I think I want to be an astronaut. And this is all he said back. Cool. Hope you're good at math. Of course, since I struggled in school and hated school, I thought I was bad at math. But a simple internet search turned me on to Khan Academy. Who's heard of them? I see everyone's hands. Okay. And what I found was, when I put the same discipline that I put in my physical training, because I learned to love it. When I put the same discipline that I applied to my physical training that helped me become a SEAL, and I applied that to my studies, I became a good student. And I started taking college classes. I started reading books. And wouldn't you know, there are a lot of inspiring mentors and books that you have access to across time and space just by cracking them open. Okay, so we're going to go back to reality, back to the nitty-gritty. That mistake that I made on the range was the last that I would make in the Navy. After that, I was sent home, and I stood in front of a disciplinary review board. Do you guys have anything like that? Yeah. Trouble? All right. I like you guys. All right, that was my 8th. So this time, when I went in there, I didn't try to plead my case. I didn't bring the stuff I brought before, like, I was honor man at this one school. I did pretty good this one time. I brought them coffee and donuts, and I thanked them for the opportunities I've been given. They took my trident away, and I was kicked out of the Navy. After the 10 years that I'd served, after the broken leg, after the hell weeks, after the deployments, everything that I had been through and sacrificed to get me to that point was over. So, again, having no plan and not very many options, I put all my focus into my education. That was kind of on the sidelines up until then. And I found that in the college applications that I was doing, and in the essays that I was writing, I was finally facing my past. And I wrote about growing up in a cult. I wrote about struggling in school. I wrote about the Navy and the failures I'd had there and the obstacles that I'd faced. And for the first time, I was able to look at my past, and instead of be ashamed of it, I realized that maybe, just maybe, if I twisted it, worked on it, beat it into something, it could be the foundation for something new something better. And apparently, someone else thought so too, because I did get accepted to Stanford. So I'm still looking for this place that I belong. And I realized that as a 30-year-old freshman, probably won't find it at Stanford. But I've also realized that that's okay. So I had to ask myself, why didn't these guys want me to talk here? What can I offer you? Because I haven't really accomplished anything noteworthy. I've failed at every single thing I've tried so far. And, I'm nobody special. So I wouldn't dare give you advice. But maybe what I can give you is this. Just the belief that inside all of us, there's a seed of potential. And that seed maybe only cracks open and sprouts when the fire gets hotter than we think we can handle. Maybe it's the idea that we'll always be searching for somewhere to belong. And that maybe you'll never find it. But that's okay. Because that search, that relentless desire to find it, is what's going to inspire you everywhere that life takes you. Thank you.
Are you going to take a few questions?
Yes, please. If anyone has any questions.
Hey, cadets, if you have questions, stand up, state your name, and ask your question.
Yes, sir.
And I would appreciate it, tell me a little bit about yourselves. I've been talking for 15 minutes, so please. Yes.
State your name.
Okay. Did everybody hear the question?
No, sir.
No, somebody said no? Okay, the question was, why do I think I haven't accomplished anything? I guess when you look at, it's easy to look at something or just someone else and to say, that person's doing well or that person's doing bad. But when you're the person on the inside and your goal wasn't, okay, I want to get through Hell Week. Your goal is, I want to be a SEAL and I want to be not needed, because to be needed is, you need someone. If somebody needs someone and that person's not there, they're going to replace that need. A need will always be filled somehow. I wanted to be chosen. And so even though I accomplished this thing for me as an individual, the community that I wanted to be a part of and that I wanted to be chosen by rejected me. So that's something that I struggle to deal with. And that's a personality thing, that's an anxiety thing that I deal with. So that's why, this driving force for me has been to find that somewhere that I belong. And yes, like I said, I'm sorry. Obviously I'm ecstatic to go to Stanford. I am. But I just don't think that, and I think this is something that you should keep anyway. You should never feel like, okay, you made it, like you ended there. Sorry, I went all over the place, but thank you for your encouragement too. Okay, first, I'd like to address the first thing you said. Because I think you talk about this program and how it's going to help you. I was talking to some of the guys here, and I think this is an incredible program. And the reason I'm here talking, you're right, it's because I got knocked down so many times, and so it's a story that probably a lot of you can relate to. But what I want to convey is that there was no point, besides, growing up and saying, I want to be a SEAL, there was no point where I decided, oh, I'm going to do this, and then 10 years down the road, this is going to come in handy for my goals when I'm 30. Everything kind of you just take what you have, right? Everyone is building their own masterpiece, and not everyone starts with the same raw materials. You take what you can get, and some people, they make sculptures out of old tires, like that's art, and some people have the paintings and the canvases and everything, but everyone's going to build a different masterpiece. And then your question was, what did I do wrong? So the M4, we had optics that are battery operated, and you have to turn them on. I forgot to turn mine on. And I came up to the firing line to do my course of fire, presented, and I realized it was off. And so I'm standing there, I'm like, I'll just take a couple shots. He's laughing. I'll just take a couple shots, and then I'll be like, yeah, I guess I'm not shooting good and nobody will be any the wiser. Okay? But this is how it's spiraled out of control. And this is, I cringe just to think about this. But, so I do that, and I start missing, just like I planned. And the instructor comes up and says, what's going on? And I'm like, I don't know. But then he goes, is your EOTech off? And this is where I had a bad thing. It was already pretty bad, and I made it worse because I said, no, it's just dim because we were at the night range last night. Right? And this guy's been teaching shooting for 40 years. He knows what's going on. Right? So he calls me and he's like, nah. He said that bold. But I kind of insisted a couple times before I said, okay, yeah, my bad. And I might have gotten away with that, but my platoon leadership was standing right there. So then that evening I had to talk to them, and this is where it gets a little murky, because maybe they had a little something, but I'm here to talk about the mistakes that I made. And when I talked to them, I didn't present myself very well. And I did kind of give a little murky version of what happened. I didn't tell them what I just told you guys, right? So I had a bad thing, I made it worse by lying, and then I made it even worse by making it murky. So, and that's when, I'm gonna go off on a little tangent here, you didn't ask this, but after that happened and I realized I was going to get kicked out, as disappointed as I was, I think I was crying, I also felt like there was a weight lifted off my shoulders. Because I knew that I had failed so many times that this was it, this was the end, and I didn't have to pretend anymore. I was free to be myself, no matter how flawed I was, no matter how messed up I was. I didn't have to pretend I was Billy Badass Navy SEAL anymore. That was it. I could just be Sam. And in a strange way, that was a good feeling. Okay, I'm done. So the question was, do I think it was my friends or me? I think, again, I'm here to talk about what I did wrong. I think anybody can fall into most communities, unless there's like some deeply embedded bias, which does happen unfortunately in the world. But most people can fall into most communities if they're nice people, right? But what I had a hard time with, and I kind of alluded to this, I was born into a cult. And I grew up and it was really bizarre, like the children broken up into age groups, we were being raised by people who weren't our parents. I didn't actually talk to anyone until I was 4 years old, according to my parents. So, and I don't know how much of that is just, some people are born with anxieties, and how much of it was, it's probably a combination of that and being in that environment growing up. But I've always just had this problem with just being relaxed around people. Like, I'll be thinking about, okay, I'll start the most innocuous conversation, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, what if they think I'm standing the wrong way? What if I say this wrong, right? And so I think, so that short answer to your question, it was me, because it was just me getting in my own way. And that's something I've been battling with and trying to work on to improve myself, to make myself more open and more vulnerable to people, because that's the only way to really make friends. Yes, sir. What was my motivation every day for every mistake I made? A lot of times it was just survival. There were some times, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I was motivated by, romantic disappointment. And you can laugh at me, but how many songs are written about that? Right? It's for a reason. So there was that, and so the motivation was always to break past whatever level it was at. And that's why I think these mistakes kind of kept me going, because they never allowed me to think that, okay, I made it, I can chill, I can relax. And I think that's a really important mindset to have if you're coming from somewhere and breaking through to a new level. You can't ever settle and think, okay, I grew up in a shack, now I'm living in a penthouse, I'm good. Because the second you do that, you start sliding. And all these mistakes that I made that I talked about, they happened when I was the most confident. When I felt the most like, Sam, you've made it, you're the man. You gotta stay a beast. question was, what aspirations did I have as a kid, and did I pursue the aspirations to be an astronaut? So as a kid, I don't really remember. Oh, I wanted to be Bruce Lee, right? Taekwondo. And then later on, I wanted to be, a Power Ranger or Spider-Man or whatever it was. And I think that's a big part of what drove me to really want to be a SEAL. Because, it was the closest thing you can get to being a ninja or a samurai or whatever. You have this vision of being this badass because you think that you'll become something, and that becoming that something will change who you are. But that's not true. Don't ask yourself what you want to be. Actually, I'm not going to tell you what to do. For me, it works better not when I ask myself what I want to be, but who I want to be. Okay? And then as far as the astronaut thing, yes, I'm working on that right now. Because, starting 4 years ago when I decided that's when I got serious with Khan Academy. And I worked my way from pre-algebra, which, I'd done in high school, to the point where I just took the Stanford placement test for math, and I placed out of 3/4 of calculus. Now, that happened over 4 years of, just doing daily math. I don't think I'm particularly smart, but I think I had a really good teacher, Sal. You're all probably familiar with his amazing voice. And I just kept coming back to it. But I never planned to, use that and say, I'm going to apply to Stanford, right? I did get kicked out and be kind of aimless to see that maybe I can take this and reorient it and focus on something else. And now I think in this way, I'm probably much better set up to become a scientist, to become an astronaut, than if I kept taking online night classes while I was in the Navy.
Sorry, I crossed that. Seriously, you really
Okay, so yeah, following, why did it take you so long to realize the mistake?
everybody heard that, right?
Because the hardest person to critique is always myself. And I think that's something most people can relate to. Richard Feynman, my favorite physicist, has this quote. He says, "Never fool yourself, but you are the easiest person to fool." So, in recognizing my own mistakes, the pattern for the longest time was, whom can I blame? Right? So, when I lied to cover for my buddy, well, why did he do drugs? Well, why did they bring me in? Why am I even a witness to this? When it was the nurses at the hospital, well, why did they come at me like that? Well, why did someone else tell me whatever? And I did that again and again until I had no choice but to accept, Sam, you messed up, and there's no one that you can blame but yourself. Anybody from over here?
Two more.
Okay, 2 more questions. Yes. Oh, sorry. Okay, 2 more. You do. Why Stanford? Okay, so when I got out and I kind of had to figure out what I was going to do, I aimed pretty small at first, and I was just going to go transfer to a local university. My brother over there had the bright idea to try for Ivy Leagues. And since I'd rather be on the West Coast than the East Coast, I swear, I had to Google, because I grew up in Greece, and I never applied to colleges in the US. I had to Google, are there Ivy Leagues on the West Coast? And I was like, oh, Stanford, sounds cool. And that's how I decided that that's the school that I wanted. Look, like, obviously the quality, but also location. Okay. Please. Why didn't I plead my case at the last disciplinary board? Because I'd done that so many times before, to almost the exact same people. So I'd been through the motions. I knew that I could tell them, like I said, oh look, I did this one good thing back then, I was honor man at this school, my performance evals are not that bad, but they'd heard it all. And ultimately what they're looking for is, can you show improvement? Can we trust that you'll fall forward and make yourself better? And I honestly thought, and I believe that if I hadn't gotten out, I wouldn't have gotten better. Because again, it's not about what I did, it's about why was I the kind of person who made all those mistakes? And I really had to search inside myself to find that. And I didn't think any amount of begging and pleading. And even if I had gotten that fifth chance or whatever, I don't think that that would have been the one that made the difference. Yes, absolutely. Because the time that I went to medic school, that was my second platoon. It was also my favorite platoon. And that was the time that I felt like I meshed with the guys the most. Probably because everybody was kind of doing their own thing. We're all weirdos. And so when that happened, and when I did that, that was probably the most devastating point in my life. But to be honest with you, I probably haven't felt happy since that happened. But, and on a good note, that's okay. Because I wouldn't be who I was. I wouldn't be standing here, hopefully supporting you, helping you, if all that hadn't happened. And if you believe science, there's probably an alternate universe where I didn't mess up, so maybe there's a Sam somewhere who still sees it.
I also want to be an astronaut, and I was wondering if you're interested in Mars colonization or asteroid mining.
Am I interested in Mars colonization or what?
Or asteroid mining.
Yes. Mars colonization and asteroid mining. I think, and this is my very uneducated personal opinion, I think our future is in space. And it seems like a no-brainer, right? We started just wandering around the plains, and then our ancestors made little rafts and got further and further away from shore. And then eventually they were able to build ships and go to new lands. Now we're able to go underwater, into the air, we're in orbit. It just makes sense that the next step is to go to other planets, to put people there, and to colonize them. But the question is, this is why I think space outside of orbit is the best goal we can have. Because number one, we'll need to get really, really smart. And number two, we'll all need to get along. Because as of right now, there's no single country that has the resources or all the technical knowledge to put a quality, effective mission on any other planet, or to grab an asteroid and put it in orbit like they're talking about. So that's my vision. That's the vision I got from Cosmos, is that we figure out how to get along. We figure out how to stop killing each other, stop destroying the planet, and we go to all these other incredible places, and we don't stop at Mars. And I think that's all I got.